Am I recording? I'm recording. Yeah. All right. Hello, everybody. It's me again. Just me this time. I'm putting this up Friday night, the night you're going to be turning in your Unit 3 paper. I've only done uh, sort of, um, one sort of, I guess, update day for the class because this unit is rather, sparse given how, as I said before, most of the unit is usually like in class practice for various things and in class writing, as a matter of fact. Um, Mostly, we're going to be adapting our arguments from Unit 3 to some extent, but for this audience, as we've been talking about, your stakeholder, for this being your fellow students. To that end, in talking about what you're supposed to like turn in, let's say, beyond actually doing the speech, uh, you're going to be turning in two outlines. So here is, well, I have put up a sample for Project 4. It's in the Unit 4 modules. Um, I've just made that available today, or recently rather, for some classes, because a lot of the stuff there uh, is not necessarily relevant. I had a for instance a slideshow that I wanted to use to sort of teach visual aids, but that's not really necessary, I would say here. Um, but in any case, I've put up the sample outline so you can get a sense of what I might be expecting in terms of, say, a text that you turn in. So at this point, I should say that you should go back and listen to the two audio lectures that are also included on this discussion post, because those will give you, if you haven't listened to them yet, those will give you a good sense of what I might be wanting in terms of an outline too. I discuss it with my colleague Charlie, uh, and we have uh, we have ways of thinking of outlines that might be helpful to you. But the big takeaway is that you shouldn't really turn in something that looks like a paper necessarily. You don't have to do that. You only have to turn in an outline, because reading off or practicing with even uh, a paper copy of your speech written out in like essay format, it's rather hard to read. And in terms of organizational strategy and just like our own sort of cognitive ability, organizing it in terms of an outline like this is going to be much more effective when it comes time to remembering what's actually in your speech. So let me run through this one. This is about, I believe, if I'm not, or if I'm correct, it's about healthcare in the United States, healthcare reform. This one is a little bit long in the tooth, but the assignment hasn't changed actually in quite some time. It's still as important as it ever was. But if you go back, or like if you haven't listened to, or rather, if you have listened to the audio, like sort of discussions between my colleague and I, um, you'll know from his talk that he really emphasizes different thinking of your essay in terms of like blocks or sections, and you can see that here, in fact. So you have the broad section of your introduction, and by the way, like I say in that audio lecture, using the tools that you do in terms of doing an outline for a regular paper are going to help you here too. And it'll look largely the same. In fact, this is how a lot of my outlines look whenever I'm writing a paper. It's like that when I'm writing a paper, and it's like that when I'm writing, a speech, or like when I'm giving a talk, let's say. It's what my lesson plans look like, as a matter of fact. So we have an introduction section right here. It has an intention getter, and it has like slides So you know, basically, if you had visual aids, the student had, slides, when to change them, etc. But they have clearly delineated major sections. So you have the introduction. Here's the attention getter. Here's what the project's going to be about. Here's some background information that you as an audience are going to need to know in order to understand their argument. Here is where the argument begins in its own section, section 3. It also continues on in a 4th section. So these two arguments are they're related but different, and they both help each other out, let's say. They both reinforce one another in terms of the need to expand healthcare. It will help the nation's economic state, and it will save lives. Boom. And then it moves into the 5th section, which is all about, all right, what can we do now that I've established how it can help the economy, how it can save lives. And I'm not talking about like any of the small points, because this is all evidence, and you can, for instance, verbally cite these. I highly recommend that. I'm going to be going over the rubric next week, and we'll be talking about verbal citations and stuff like that, how to do that. It's rather simple. You just say something like, according to blah blah blah, here are the facts that I'm trying to give you, etc. But it should be clear to you all by now that, again, the structure of an outline, or the structure of a speech, I should say, isn't all that different from a paper. You should be invited to think of both of these kinds of things as conversations. Whether you're having one with your friends, whether you're giving a speech, whether you're writing a paper, writing a letter to your stakeholder, all of these things have a rhetorical usefulness in common. You're trying to convey some kind of point in them. And in order to do that, you're talking it through. You're using evidence. It might be about very minor things and just like conversations with your friends, but you're still doing the work of rhetorical strategy. It just might be really internalized. So I'm jumping around here. So then we move, all right, here's the proposal section, and then we move into the conclusion, where it reifies all these points that were mentioned previously, and then sort of seals the deal down here. So I urge you to look at this. This video was rather short, but we didn't necessarily have a lot to talk about in terms of the assignment per se. I think a lot of that's covered in our discussions, or my discussion with my colleague, and using that along with this example, I think you're going to have a great outline. But I want to stress, the outlines are just homework grades. So your rough draft for that, as well as the final draft for it, those are just homework grades. They're going to be worth a lot of points. So if you haven't, if you've been missing some assignments, that's understandable, and it happens every year. And certainly, at this time, people getting behind is completely normal for me, and I understand how doing any kind of schoolwork can be hard. And so here are basically two assignments that you can, like two big assignments to focus on. So there's that, in addition to the final speech that you are to record. Between now and the end of the semester, there's really only 3 major assignments. It's like the rough draft for your outline, which is 50%, and it should be relatively, minor in terms of like the details and stuff like that. There's like the final full speaking outline, which will be due on the day of the speech, which is 2 Fridays from now. If I can pull that up, the calendar. Yeah, the 8th. May 8th is when your final speeches will be due. So the rough draft will be due on the 1st. Um, you have to do I think, a discussion post, if I remember correctly, where you do a survey of your fellow students. That's due on the 26th. And you have some journals that you have to do as well, and those are all up for all of my classes. Um, so there aren't a lot of assignments between now and the end of the semester. If you've been doing the journals all along, which you should have ideally, you'll have a decent time with those. But my interest isn't making you do like an exam at the end of the year that's like 150 questions or something like that, or do a ton of readings or write a paper. Um, like I've said, the final draft for your outline is just 1,000 words. This is only 1,000 words ultimately. So that's something to think about. So think tactically with all of your assignments that are due in all of your classes. Take care of yourselves. Space out your work. God knows that I have trouble like doing work in this environment, but if we work together, we'll make it through this. And I think that based on the work that I've seen you do for your Unit 3 projects so far, it's been very heartening. I've really enjoyed it. And so I think that you're going to have even, well, not just good final, Unit 3 papers, but good final speeches as well. So, yeah, as you can tell, I'm probably I'm feeling a little nervous about everything still, but I think that's natural, and it's the same for a lot of you. I have no doubt. So, my main interest is in all of you staying safe, staying healthy. Um, this class, it's like, don't not pay attention to it, but you gotta do the important stuff at this point. So um, please talk to me if you're having any trouble doing any of this, any of the assignments. We'll try and work out something. Okay. Um, all right. So please turn in this out, or like, please start working on your outlines if you haven't yet. You shouldn't have to do any more research than you have already. It's possible that you might have to do a little based upon your stakeholder, but I think you're gonna get a sense of that come Monday, after everybody's turned in responses to the surveys. You're gonna get a sense of what your fellow students know about your issue, and you're going to get a sense of what you might need in order to persuade them to a certain end. All right. I'm done rambling. I'm going to release probably 2 videos next week, one discussing the rubric, one discussing speaking strategies, but I might do a speaking strategies audio lecture, so it might be a video and an audio lecture, but that might be the bulk of the work that we have left to do. Let's see what else. Yeah, if people want to talk to me next week, if you want feedback on your outlines and stuff like that, if you want to conference with me, please get in touch. Otherwise, I'm going to assume that you're working on your papers and you're working on your projects, because that's the only information I have. All right, take care of yourselves. I will see you on the flip side.